Hello everybody, welcome to yet another Meet the Filmmakers. We are talking about the film The Roads in February, and with us here we have the director Katherine Jerkovic, and the film is playing in our first feature competition, and tonight we'll see the international premiere of the film. There are still tickets available, and I urge you to get a seat to this heartwarming movie. Katherine will also be there, happy to answer all your questions in person. The screening is at 6:30 p.m. in Cinema Cyprus, so I hope to see you all there. Let's dive in and talk about the film a little bit. Before we start, I just want to say that it had its world premiere at the Toronto Film Festival, where it also picked up the Best Canadian Feature Film. First Feature Award. If I were to try and describe the film in one sentence, I would probably say it's an endearing grandchild story, and they're kind of trying to reconnect with each other, and also in the grandchild's case, trying to reconnect with the place, with her former home where she was born. And it's a really unique perspective on immigration. So if we could maybe start with what sparked this film. I know it's personal, and it's even autobiographical.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
So if you could just maybe the genesis, or what was the one? Why did you choose this film as your first feature?
Well, I didn't choose it. It's what I needed to write at the time. I started writing the film after I think it was my last trip to visit my grandmother. In my case, it was my paternal grandmother, who was a Croatian immigrant living in Argentina. And I had been living in Montreal for like 11 years and visiting home, Argentina and Uruguay. And I think that after that trip, I started writing this story because I felt that I needed to make a decision about. It was a time where I had to choose. I felt that if I stayed longer in Canada, I had to really assume, accept, and integrate. Well, I was very well integrated, but like accept that I was gonna build a life en route in a place where I will be away from my family. And so, but also I had been visiting for many years and even trying to go back, and it had been very difficult for all sort of reasons. So it was really a time of my life where I was like in between, and I was like almost 30 years old. So I felt that, I had to make a decision. And so it was a long process. It was like 4 or 5 years of writing. And I think that as I was writing, I was accepting this change in myself. So it's like I wrote, so it was like the writing process sort of fed my experience, my coming to terms, and then my experience. So I think, that was a kind of so it was like a very kind of almost therapeutic.
Organic and helpful. And can we talk a little bit about language and communication, because you speak a lot of languages and have a very diverse background, and the film has quite a little dialogue, and a lot remains unsaid, and everything still gets said, which is credit to you, the director, and the actors. So could you talk about like your attitude towards language? Was there ever like a point where you had more dialogue in the film?
No, it's funny. You're not the first person to ask this. I think there is more like statistically, in terms of like pages and script and dialogue. I think there's more dialogue than there seemed to be. I think that, well, it's not like people don't talk a lot, but I think that a lot of, like you said, important things get said outside of the dialogue in like more like a visual or sound mise en scène dialogue language. So I think that gives the impression that there is not so much dialogue, because the dialogue is not always the vehicle for conveying like information. But No, I come from like I worked like a lot in experimental film and video art, so I come from like a very visual language. So to me, dialogue it's important, but it has to be very natural, and it is not like the main kind of
communication.
Yeah, exactly. So
did you work? I just want to mention there's two great leading ladies here. There's Gloria De Masi, Uruguayan actress, and then there's Arlene Stewart, who's also mixed background, but
Arlene Aguayo Stewart. She has both family names.
Yes. Yeah. So did you? Well, just to kind of add on to that, how was it? Because this is a co-production between Canada and Uruguay, and you also have one actress from Uruguay and the other from Canada. So how was? I mean, I would assume that made everything more difficult. Or how was your experience trying to kind of manage the shoot?
It's not an official co-production. It's more like a collaboration between producer from Montreal and producer from Uruguay. So yeah. The young lead actress, she's Canadian, but her father is from Chile, so she was fluent in Spanish, and she could connect to the story because she had a similar experience visiting her paternal family in Chile, and having this kind of like mixed, feeling that you belong there but you're different, and feeling that when you get there they don't really. When you visit, well, sometimes some people accept you, some do not, but it's more the sensation that they don't really get to grasp who you are, and there's like a part of you that's kind of they cannot really understand it or connect with. So we needed the lead actress to be from Canada for credit, for funding purposes, but also to make the story more authentic. I wanted this to be the case. So we made a casting in Montreal, and there was not a lot of choice, but Arlene was fantastic.
She's very good.
She's very good, and she says a lot just with her eyes, and she has a very because it's a special character. It's like a very low-key character, very discreet, but you have to feel that there's a lot of generosity and humanity in herself, but she cannot maybe. She doesn't have a lot of confidence, so it's special because she says a lot, and she says a lot, she expresses a lot, but I think in a way that it's not striking, not like bold.
And could you talk about Gloria a little bit? Because
yeah, Gloria. She's amazing. Yeah. She's amazing. Yes, Gloria. She's she's been doing. Well, she's mostly theater actress. She acted from independent to classic theater for 40, 50 years. This was her first main role in a movie.
Wow.
She did a little bit of small roles in TV and so on. But it was great because coming from a background theater, I think that they have the capacity to reinvent the scene every time and to reinfuse it with different, feelings. And, because in cinema, usually you redo the take over and over, and it's pretty much always the same. You ask for little differences, but she doesn't work like this. She does it different every time. Oh, wow. And you never get the same thing more than once. So it's very interesting. She's very alive in her acting. A little bit unpredictable, which I liked, but we had to work with that, and it was a great. But when I did the callback, because I had many actresses that we auditioned for the grandmother, and two of them were very interesting, Gloria and another one. So when we did the callback, I traveled to Uruguay with Arlene to check the chemistry,
test,
and to see how they work together, and then when we went for shooting the film, I had them living together.
Oh, that's great.
Yes, so they had to, because you could feel that they didn't have a past together in the real life. So this worked because they became really fond of each other, and so it was nice. And I think that Gloria, she has a very strong presence, and yet she manages to keep her have the right space and the right place in the movie, not to overtake, so that Arlene both really respect each other, and they have the good balance. So I think that also it says a lot about how professional they are, but also how respectful of each other they were, and how.
I'm curious because a lot of this film is about can you ever go back home again?
Yeah.
And I'm just curious on your thoughts, because it's one thing, can you ever go back home again? But what if you have like more than one home? You have like two homes.
Yeah.
And I feel like in a way, yes, there can be difficulties to it.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, there's like richness to it.
Yeah,
you kind of get like a double of everything.
Yeah,
so I'm curious about your thoughts. Can you go back home again?
I think that home is a fantasy, you know, and the more you go back home, the more you're like confronting yourself to the fact that it's a fantasy, and that home is more like inside yourself. I think that for a long time for like until my 20s, it was very difficult for me, this fragmented cultural background and fragmented identities, and I didn't deal with it very well. I kept wanting to answer, you know, this simple question: where do you come from? And I kept wanting to be able to answer easily. So also the process of starting to write this film was when I started to think that maybe I had to look at it from a positive, because I could not change it. So now I think that it's a different way of belonging. It's fragmented. It's like a puzzle.
So much to talk about this movie.
Come and see it.
So come and see it tonight, 6:30, and we'll talk more. Thank you for joining us.